Hello, and welcome to Khyber Shards, a 5th edition actual play show set in the Eberron campaign world. As it is Friday, we are doing a Khyber Shards Answers, and we are joined by RA. So, most recent episode, we had the return of the party and dealing with the escape of Dicer into the manor. And tragic end to that story. And a bit of confrontation with Thora, and there are numerous questions regarding that. So we're gonna jump right in. First, a question for RA, not specifically for Esri, from Mia. RA, you rolled a 2 for initiative in the combat with Dicer. What's up with that? No, I'm kidding. I'm wondering what your preference is for initiative rolls. Do you prefer to go first, last, somewhere in the middle? And if so, why?
Well, mechanically speaking, I'd have to think through this a little bit longer to speak definitively, but it's usually advantageous, like, to be higher up in the order. Like, there's very few situations where you don't want to be higher, at least higher in the order than the things you're fighting. I can think of some situations where I'd rather be after some other players potentially in the order. But yeah, I mean, I think just mechanically speaking, earlier is just better. You get a slight advantage.
Yeah.
By being that, I think the bigger conversation here is I sort of have a problem with mechanical initiative at all. Like I kind of don't like it.
What do you not like about it?
There's no room for like role play in that. Like it's at least in D&D. Let's see. In D&D, it's all about your dex and maybe if you have a feat or something. But it's purely like a physical trait, how ready you are to act. And let's see, in Savage Worlds, it's completely random.
It's completely random unless you've got specific things to boost it.
Right. Let's see. One Ring does a little better in that, like, you get to choose your and you have a benefit and a penalty for choosing initiative. And I do actually like that a little bit better. Because there are instances where it makes total sense. I'm not really interested in a fight. I wasn't paying attention. That it should be less. You should be lower in the order just because you weren't ready. And sometimes it's like, I was preparing for this fight. I was the one who thought something was going to go down, and I feel like you should be able to choose in some way your position in the initiative based on role play, more than just mechanics.
I don't think you've ever played Genesis, right?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so the way that Genesis initiative goes is interesting. Everyone rolls initiative, and your character sheet does determine how well you're likely to roll an initiative. But what you roll doesn't get your spot; it gets a player character spot.
Yeah,
and then in each round, the player characters can choose what order they want to take those spots in. So we get player character spot, NPC spot, NPC spot, character player spot, and we can decide. The player characters can decide among themselves who takes each spot as the round goes. It allows for a little more dynamic. You can kind of react because you don't have to like lay them all out at the beginning of the round. It's just we have a PC slot, who's going, and then something may happen where halfway through the round, what order you thought you would have gone in is gonna change. So that allows for a little more, I guess, a little more strategic play, and a little more room for that kind of consideration. It would be interesting to see. Yeah, it would be interesting to see other bases for initiative, other than the main other one I've seen is usually like just sides initiative. So that's what One Ring does. Bad guys go, good guys go, bad guys go, good guys go.
Right.
Which is simple, and that's an advantage. But
I mean, there's definitely some fun tension that comes from initiative order.
yeah,
There's a tactical tension in that, and I like that.
mm-hmm.
It usually only matters to me on the first round. After the first
Right.
round, it's just established, and that's how you're playing.
Yeah, it's just a circle now. So,
but it's just at the beginning when I'm like, when what I roll is disconnected from the story in my head, that I get annoyed. It's like,
yeah,
like what? Why am I going first? This doesn't make any sense. My character doesn't think this is a threat.
In older editions of Dungeons and Dragons, there was the option to delay your entire turn. Like you could just hold your turn until a later point in the initiative, and that moved you in the initiative. And I guess there were some cheesy things you could do with that. I never discovered that particular brand of cheesiness, but I guess there were some cheesy things you could do with that. And so 5th edition got rid of that and replaced it with the way in which you hold your action, which is pretty costly actually, because it's not just that you hold your action, it also costs you your reaction. Which I think
it may not
a
even
little
trigger
punishing
because you have to.
Yeah, because you have to declare the trigger. That's right. And I think that's a little bit punishing. It'd be interesting to see. Obviously, all the speculation right now is that they're gearing up for a 5.5 or a 6th edition or something, and it'd be interesting to see if they adjust things. Emily, who has been declared the MVP of this KSA for her numerous questions.
Is that a thing we have?
Apparently, at least according to Laura. Laura has declared Emily the MVP of this KSE. Emily asks, was Dicer always intended to be a killing machine, or was there a way to make him an ally of the party? Relatedly, there's a question later on of, did you think Dicer could have become a pet instead of just a danger to everyone, or were you having Esri make a choice about Dicer that made sense for the character, but you felt was probably actually foolish? I'd like to hear your answer first, and then I'll talk about whether it was actually possible.
I at no point did I think that those creatures could be certainly not pets. I think there probably was a world in which how to control them maybe got worked out. But of course, none of our characters would have that. That would be a step pretty far for any of those characters to want to control those things for the purpose that they were created. So no, it's just Esri's broken toy soft spot. You know, he doesn't want to discard things that seem dangerous. It's just kind of a hole in his judgment. So
sure, an empathetic hole, but you are 100% correct. Yeah, there's a world in which you could get control of it. So to Emily's question, to me, was he intended to be a killing machine, or was there a way to make an ally of the party? Yes. I mean, Dicer was a killing machine. Like the only thing that creature was bred for was killing. But if you're a bioengineering company and you've created a killing beast that you don't have any control over, you've created a bad killing beast. And hopefully wouldn't then mass produce it, although all of sci-fi tells me that judgment is not necessarily the case. But yeah, Dicer was a killing machine. Yes, it was theoretically possible to control Dicer, but not in the sense of a pet, not in the sense of Dicer would learn affection for you, because Dicer was not a naturally occurring beast with naturally occurring feelings. So
I should say that Esri's main motivation wasn't necessarily to make it a pet anyway. His main motivation was to be able to study it and see it grow and understand it better. He thought they could contain it. That's probably as far as he really went for it as far as the best case scenario in his mind too. That they could learn something from it.
Yeah. Actually, it now occurs to me, saying what I just said, that Dicer was not mechanically a beast, and so I shouldn't have let Shade talk to him. Not that it actually mattered, but... Emily then apologizes for the rapid influx of Thora questions. No apology required. We are delighted to receive listener questions. Okay. I was watching the older episodes, and did Thora lose her eye when her mark was burned off? If not, has she lost any vision in her left eye, whether due to the original injury or just constantly hiding the scar, or is she just constantly hiding the scar with her hair? Is Thora's sword a regular magic item, as in Thora didn't create it unless she's hiding some secret artificer talents, or is it part of her dragon mark? If it's the latter, does she have full control over it, and does it sometimes manifest without her conscious input due to anger and stress? Previously, I'd assumed it was magic, but by the way it manifested before she warned Ezri to be polite, made it seem like it's part of her dragon mark. So those two questions are somewhat related. First off, Thora's eye. We have never seen Thora without the hair covering her face, other than briefly. We know that side of her face is a mass of burn scars because her whole that side of her face caught fire. So, yeah, I mean, medically, it's got to be true that she's at least lost some vision in that eye. In terms of the sword is not a manifestation of her mark. It's also not a magical item. Thora's rogue subclass is Soul Knife. She's a Soul Knife, so that's part of her innate ability is she manifests a psychic blade. And so, yeah, I inserted some of her emotional state into the blade in that particular moment. So yes, it is. It's not specifically connected to her mark, but it is an ability of hers rather than a magical item that she's carrying. And then, was any of Thora's mostly justified, in my opinion, aside from pulling the sword on the strike force, not a great example to the kids, anger born from her worry over the strike force and how she thought they might have died? Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess it's not entirely dissimilar to the way that the group feels about Donabella. Here's someone like them who hasn't had all the awful experiences that they've had, and so, they have a protective feeling about Donabella because they don't want Donabella to go through anything like what they went through, which is what motivated the whole dramatic scene following their discovery of Donabella, and even up into and including Ezri's essentially threatening Donabella's mom, because we have this assumption of Donabella's what happened to us will happen to Donabella, or something like what happened to us. Thora's that, but farther down the road. Like Thora's been through lots of awful things because of her mark, and this group is another chance. Like, she got a group of aberrant marked people together, and it has gone badly in some way that we haven't really seen thoroughly, but obviously her break with Dane is from that. And here she is trying again, and she's gathered another one, and awesome, they disappeared into another plane and have died or gotten lost or who knows what, because I didn't make them stay, like, because I allowed this to happen. Yeah, Thora feels responsible for the group to a certain degree. So yes, a lot of her anger is born of that. I will say some of it, and this is a little bit, I think, explored in upcoming episodes, so I won't go into it too much. Some of it is also Thora's whole life is military, and she tries very hard not to give orders to the group because she's got the sense that that's not going to work well. She's insightful enough to understand that that's not what this group is going to respond well to. But being disregarded to a degree, or having her view disregarded, what we're doing. Especially in that moment when another example of her view being not taken seriously by the party is running loose in the mansion. Yeah, so it's a little mix of those things is I think what's going on there. Yeah. And then lastly, if I'm remembering properly, Arlo had always called Thora Lady Tavine, Mistress Tavine, or Headmistress Tavine. However, he called her by her first name in this last episode before correcting himself. Was this an out-of-character slip of the tongue, or was there a reason for him using her first name? I don't know. I mean, it was definitely a slip of the tongue. Yes, he, in this particular situation, Arlo's not actually well suited for danger crisis situations. Arlo's been a professor. Like Arlo's family's great scam was holding on to tenure for a century. Like it's not. Yeah, Arlo's not a, oh my gosh, the school's under attack kind of guy, and so he's, to say the least, frazzled.
Yeah, that's interesting. He does not he does not fit in with the rest of the adults in the building, even Forge.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, probably no one fits in with Forge at the moment because that's just a very different being, but
yeah.
Certainly not strained under crisis as Forge.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was obviously Arlo was proposed by a viewer, and I liked, one of the things I liked about the description was this teacher is just a teacher. Like we don't see that in the X-Men really. Like the X-Men, the closest thing we get is sometimes like Moira McTaggart is not a superhero, and she sometimes works with the X-Men, but she's also not just a person. She's, depending on what version we're looking at, a super scientist or a ex-spy or various things like that. Arlo's none of those things. Arlo's...
Doesn't she also become super in the...
She might in one of
the House of X stuff?
Oh, you know what? I think she does. Yes. Arlo is, to continue the X-Men analogy, Arlo's a mutant who isn't particularly interested in using his mutant power.
Yeah. Who is that? That's interesting.
It's got to be there, but obviously they're not going to be a primary character, I would imagine, in a superhero comic. I mean, I'm not sure if somebody
almost Hank McCoy, but not. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, he would
he's
certainly rather not be a mutant.
Yeah, he's mostly not interested in going out and using his super strength to fight crime. He's mostly interested in doing science. Yeah, so I guess a little bit like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
I guess a little bit like that. But yeah, Arlo does not fit in. He does not in that sense at all. Yeah. There was also a question about Arlo losing his concentration from Emily. He seemed to revert to his changeling form when startled. Is this how changeling work in your world, or is this unique to Arlo? It is unique to Arlo. Arlo is constantly, essentially concentrating on a spell to hide his dragon mark. Because normally the way I would usually run it is that dragon marks are weird. Both true and aberrant ones, if you, for some way, lose the part of skin or body that the dragon mark's on. Like if you've got a dragon mark on your hand and you lose your hand, your dragon mark will remanifest somewhere else on your body. So I tend to imagine in my Eberron that changelings with aberrant dragon marks would have the same problem, is no matter what form you changed into, that mark is always there. And since Arlo's is across his face, that's a problem. So Arlo is always concentrating on a spell to hide his mark, essentially. and so that's when stuff like this happens, it has the potential to break his concentration. Is kind of how I've viewed it. Yet another way in which Arlo is not particularly suited to the world he has found himself in.
I was very happy with how that moment turned out.
I was too. I and not just because we got to hear Eric shout, "Because I'm an adult." But no, I liked that interaction. I liked it. It was a nice moment with. I really liked this whole episode with you guys. I liked how comfortable you guys were playing both characters.
Yeah,
I liked that.
it is interesting. It's a weird feeling if you should go back and analyze it, like switching. I mean, I guess it's a DM thing.
That's probably true.
You don't usually get to do it on the other side of the table where you're switching between personalities.
It was interesting. The idea actually jumped to me out of the new Dune tabletop RPG, because in the premise in the Dune tabletop RPG is that you as a group create a house. You create a minor house in the Imperium, and you, depending on the tier of play you want to do, you establish yourselves as retainers of the house, but you're also supposed to establish one or two sort of supporting cast, and there are sort of two levels of that. There's just set dressing characters, and there's actual supporting cast that you'll have responsibility for as a player. And then whenever a scene goes on that your main character might not be suited to, like if you've built the house's swordmaster, and what we're about to do is go to a ball and try and subtly discern some information, then the house's swordmaster might not make a lot of sense for that for that mission, and so you might pick up one of the supporting cast, and that kind of struck
smart.
me as an interesting idea.
That is like the major, not the only one, but a major suspension of disbelief issue in most RPGs. Like, why are we always all going to do all things together? Like,
right.
This doesn't make that much sense, except we acknowledge that we're playing a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I kind of have started to really like that stable of characters idea in the RPGs that I run. I mean, it's very present in my home game. We've got this huge stable of NPCs that have built up in the town that you guys are playing in, and I'm kind of trying to start to build that up a little bit with this game, so that if we ever find ourselves in a situation where we're playing and you say, you know what, after what happened last time, Ezri Ezri's out for a bit. Ezri needs to process this, or you know, narratively, something happens and we decide it's a good narrative beat for, like, Ezri's been severely injured and he's going to require recovery time. You can pick up a different a character that's already established, and it doesn't have to be this weird thing where, hi, you've never met me, but come go into life-threatening danger with me.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm trying to go with a lot of my games, and I like that idea. So that's where the kids came from, and I really liked that you guys were so immediately comfortable with it. I was a little unsure of whether everyone would enjoy it, but I like that
it's like I don't know, it's like a shower, you know, it's like a little moment to cleanse and just kind of shrug off whatever rut maybe you're in with your main. And
yeah.
Oh no, I'm using video game terms.
Yeah, having an alt. So Nathan asks, RA, has Ezri's encounter with Arandis Full changed his understanding of himself or his mark? Does he intend to actively work to revitalize the Mark of Death? And does he know anything about the blood of Vol or Vol's present status in the world?
The first question, yes, absolutely. it's we talked about this a little bit, I think, last time I did KSA after that episode. It's not necessarily knowledge that he's grateful for exactly, but it certainly changes how he views things, and that's going to come into play. It's bad news in his opinion, and but it will definitely inform decisions going forward. Does he intend to actively rebuild it? Not. I mean, I think I'm fine to say not at present. It's that's just like a question. That's very new information for him. So he's not prepared to act to just like jump into that. It's definitely not something he was waiting for permission or an excuse to go do. And so he's processing that. What was the last bit there?
Does he know anything about the blood of Vol or Vol's present status in the world?
Yeah, no, not really. Other than just like the very general information that there is a religion, a cult out there that calls themselves that. It's not something he's interacted with very much, but it is like the lead, one of the only leads that he can pursue. So he's aware that that he probably needs to at least figure out what they're about, and if it's anything beneficial or good. I mean, there's just this whole thing of no one in his life knows about this mark. It's a legend as far as anyone connected to him knows. And it was a long time ago. And so there's very much a dissonance between what he's learned and his life. And it's not at all clear in what way those things dovetail. I mean, yes, obviously there are people out there who want to kill him because of it, and maybe there are plenty of those people around, even in Stormreach. Maybe there's plenty of people that if it was made known to them that he carried the mark of death, that they would be like, okay, we'll kill him. But it feels like in some way he's just completely disconnected. His reality is disconnected from this stuff that he's learned about himself. And so I don't know, it's a very, very confusing thing, I think, to take on. And he does, just what exactly do you do with that? Right. If anything. It's not necessarily clear that there's anything he should do. He's grateful to have been sent back. Yeah. He's definitely trying to figure out how grateful is he just now. Like,
right. It's interesting to me because it's such a classic moment in fantasy tropes. You're a wizard, Harry, or you must come with me and learn the ways of the Force. Like it's this very, very classic, turns out you're more than you thought you were, at least from the perspective of the person telling you. And I find it very interesting that Esri's reaction to that, and very compelling that Esri's reaction to that is not the tropey one of, I always knew it, right? I mean, it's, I always knew there was something special about me. It's more, oh, thank you.
Are you sure?
Yeah, right. Could it not
maybe
be? Yeah. Could we think about this maybe a little? So yeah, I find that to be a very, very fun.
Well, it's a little more Frodo, right? It's, I mean, Frodo accepts it, but his first instinct is, oh, finally, here.
Right.
You great people, y'all deal with it. I'm done.
Yeah, yeah, very much. That's yeah, yeah. I mean, where we imagine a world where, um, I mean, I guess that's kind of Luke's initial reaction is also, I can't go join the war. I've got to stay and help, and then events intervene to prevent him from being able to do that. But we knew already that Luke wanted to go. He just
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so he just needed to have this one. We needed to show him being responsible to his family, and then murder his family so that he doesn't need to be responsible to them anymore. But it's a little more sincere from Esri, and I do find that a fun choice, especially for this, because for for whatever percentage of our audience is Eberron nerds, this is like the big thing. In almost all the original published Eberron stuff, um, Vol and the Emerald Claw are like the easy bad guys. They're the tropey evil cult that's trying to get the Ark of the Covenant, right? It's and so having a player discover that they have the Mark of Death is a pretty common, probably, Eberron twist, and I like this version of it because and it's one of the reasons I wanted to do it with Esri, not just because Esri's mark fit really well with what you had come up with, that it just like I was looking at it like, oh, that's the Mark of Death, so
right.
let's do that. But also because Esri is not eagerly heroic. Like it's neither that Esri has learned this horrible thing about him, and so he has to go and destroy Erandis wherever she is to prevent her from waking some unspeakable horror through him. Nor is it, I have this mission in life to restore this lost legacy. It's just, this is really inconvenient.
Yeah.
I got an experiment cooking at home. Like,
what?
Yeah.
Oh, Ezra, I'm sorry. I thought that was an aside where like you something was happening in your house you needed to go take care of.
No.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't necessarily inspiration, but like just the idea of a fourth in line for the throne kind of thing, who's very, very comfortably not going to be king, and then something happens and suddenly they're king, and they're like, well, I prepared my whole life to not be king. What do you want from me?
Yeah. Laura would like to know, when do we get to meet your family? Esri's, presumably.
That's I mean, I've thrown this out there a few times. I don't like plot out all the branches. I just sort of like give hooks and I accept wherever they come in. And so I as a player, I don't know about Esri's family. Because Esri doesn't know about his family. He doesn't know if they're alive, or how many of them there are, or if they're alive, where they are. So I have no idea how to answer that question.
Fair enough. Spartacus asks, what was your impetus or inspiration for your student character Mo? How did you all get into character with them so quickly?
Man, that's a good question. Man, I don't know if I don't know that I had any conscious. I may have been watching something or when we did that. So we did this a while ago. Philip told us, go ahead and create a student who might be coming, and so there wasn't a whole lot that guided it. I just sort of picked a couple things, and really HeroForged it. I kind of went on HeroForge and just started tinkering around. And was like gnome boy, and just kind of let it evolve in my head. It just kind of was like a blob that I thought about a little while. I've talked about this too, but like it's very freeing when you don't care about the character at the beginning very much. Um, you just throw some spaghetti and see what sticks, and move and sort of evolve it from there, and then it can become whatever it needs to be at the time. Uh, yeah, man, I'm really trying to think if I recall making any real deliberate decisions. I think there was the aspect of being sort of a street urchin that I wanted in there for Esri to potentially have a way to connect with him. I think that's really the only metagaming thing I came up with.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was just kind of picking stuff out of the air.
Yeah. Did you do any thought, give much thought ahead of time to how you were going to get into the character, like to what the personality was, or was it just we started playing and this is the character that appeared?
I did, but only in the sense that I'm talking about, where like and this I always do this, and I feel like probably a lot of people do, but it's one of the things where, because it's always inside your own head, you don't know if you're weird or not. Where I have him have fake conversations and put him in fake situations, and sort of talk through him in my head through those situations, and his personality starts to form.
Yeah, no, I get that. I practice voices out loud ahead of time, so none.
I did a little bit of that. The voice was the most worrying thing. It's always hard for me to know how how voices that go above register for me will come out. Like I'm pretty confident about going low and going big, because that's closer, I guess, to natural. Trying to do a little boy, trying to do girls or women, I never really know how it's going to turn out, so you just kind of go for it and hope. I certainly didn't go for it the way Colin did.
No. Oh man, that was hilarious. Yeah, I had no warning that was going to happen when he started speaking like that. Other than that, he said, "This voice, I don't know about this voice," but then didn't like give a sampling of it or anything. But it was great.
Yeah, that's right. He did sort of warn us, but not in specific.
Yeah. And then our last question is again from Emily, and I'm curious about this. RA, why use darling with the Sphinx? So I'm curious. We all treated you like that was in character, and I'm curious, was that in character or was that RA slipped out to make a joke? Okay.
No, it was. I mean, maybe not deliberate enough. I think part of it was we had been watching Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and so there's a little bit of like period speak in that. And a little bit of sass in that just sort of infected.
Just a little sass.
Yeah. Esri was always intended to be a sassy character. And we just got into emo territory really quickly. And so he, in a situation where he's just come back to life, and he's just learned that this end goal that they've been pursuing, there actually isn't all that much to do. There's no danger here, not really. I mean, there, theoretical danger, but nothing imminent. He's not feeling, again, you just come back to life, so there's not a whole lot that you're looking at that moment that's like, this feels dangerous. I just faced the most dangerous situation I can. Whatever. And so his just sort of his sassy defensive mechanism came back in. Darling, I mean, I won't claim to have thought through that. If very, very much, maybe it wasn't a great choice of word, but It was just
it
me
certainly
trying
came
to,
off sassy. I mean, the sass
yeah,
the sass came through, so that worked.
that was the intent. Is like,
Yeah.
and he wasn't very happy with the Sphinx. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
I know he got some pushback from everyone for being like, I don't know, overly pedantic or over like, obviously this is an ancient creature or whatever, and so
Right.
you're talking down to it. But just like, seriously, man, come on, get just make it a happy message. You show up in someone's nightmare and say, "Come help me." What do you? There's only one way that comes off. Not come help me, come find me. Didn't say help.
Right. Well, if Shade would just have some happier dreams about her childhood, it would have been easier.
It's true.
Oh, and sad.
Oh, little baby fox Shade with her little baby fox siblings.
Oh my gosh.
The baby fox pile.
Oh. Oh, that's much sadder now. All right. Well, that is all of our questions. Thank you so much, everyone who submitted questions. We very much enjoy that there are this many people interested in our kooky little game here. So thank you all so much. If you'd like to get in touch or submit questions for Khyber Shards answers, you can do so in comments or over on our Discord. The link to that and all of our other social media is down there in ye old description. And while down there, if you don't mind hitting any of those engagement buttons, all things serve the algorithm. And in the meantime, new episodes of Khyber Shards every Monday, new Khyber Shards answers every Friday. And until next time, thanks for rolling with us.